Hey everybody, this is Perch. I did a video analyzing kind of Alan Moore and him being angry and everything else, and I got some responses to it. It was fine. As I said in the video, it was a theory. I got a couple people really angry. There's definitely some Alan Moore kind of acolytes, just like there's some Alan Moore, intense haters out there, and and they always pop up, and either they can't hear things that are very positive or very negative. Alan Moore is polarizing in kind of strange ways. It's never quite made a lot of sense to me, but there you go. That's how the world works, I guess. Anyway, so in that video, I kind of speculated, like, why is Alan Moore angry? And there's a bunch of reasons that he's angry, I believe, and one of the things that I said during the video, and it's tough for, I think, sometimes people to hear this, is some of it is about the money. I think, and in the comic industry and in any kind of creative industry, there's something dirty about that. People don't want to admit that money is a driver for some of their outcomes. It's like it cheapens the work. But you have to make peace of that. Make peace with yourself. You still need to eat. So whether it's about the money for you or it's not about the money, it's about the money on some level. Now, the nuance there is you can't let money just control everything you do. You do have, because it is a creative, product. People can typically smell when something is purely a cash grab. They can tell when there's no real creative spirit or passion or anything to the project, and the person's just going for money. You could tell, and so that's no good either. You definitely have to find that balance between, good creative, nice spirit of something and getting paid for what you do. You have to find that balance there. Anyway, a viewer wrote in wanting to challenge that video, sort of, says, okay, you got this wrong. That's cool. And they do a good job of kind of explaining why. So let's read it and see the counter argument to the why Alan Moore was mad. Is it about money and everything else? So let's go. It says, hey, Perch, I like your channel. It's been great. I am one of your daily viewers. Thank you. You got this one wrong. Okay. Technically, of DC is still making money off Moore, he would hate that. If DC is still making money off Moore, he would hate that, not because of the money, because God knows DC would pay him a boatload of money to shut up about how much he hates adaptations of his work, but because DC would still have control. It's kind of, okay, well, let's finish the mail. And I think that's what it comes down to. DC has control, and Alan Moore wants it back. I almost think that if tomorrow some legislation passed that all intellectual property returns to its creators and is out of the hands of big corporations, that Alan Moore would pull all of his work out of print immediately. I agree with that statement, by the way, but not maybe for the reasons you think. But anyway, let's finish now. It says, it's not about money. Alan Moore loved comics, but the money men in the industry wanted to exploit Moore, and he didn't want that. It's not just that he's an artist. He has dignity. Though you're probably going to flag this as talking in circles, but you can't exactly remove money out of the equation because it's like air. It's just a facet of our world. But money isn't the motivator. It is something bigger for Moore, something spiritual, grande, and magical. Comics. Have a lovely day. So, I don't disagree with the point here. I agree, and I agree and I disagree, both. Now, there's parts of this that are true. I don't believe the world revolves around money, like I mentioned before. If you completely focus on nothing but the money, the creativity suffers. And I don't think that Moore is only about the money. I don't think it's only about the money, but I do think money plays a factor. Because, and this is where I agree with you, money is, in this case, it's like air. It's intrinsically linked to the equation. It is kind of the driver for several of the pieces of the problem. DC is making money off of his work. Yes, that means DC has control. The issue that Moore has is that he's not in control of the thing he made, therefore he's upset. One of the outputs of that is money. If DC came around and they said, hey, here's a giant check, shut the fuck up, I don't think Moore would take it. Now, Moore's estate, when Alan Moore dies, and I think he's got several years left in him, but not an infinite amount. And I do think At some point I'll be announcing Alan Moore's death on this channel, which will be depressing. But I mean, because it happens to everyone, we can be certain of that. I suspect that the people managing his state will take a different view of things, and that's just the cynical part of me that has watched that play go down many, many, many times. But we'll see. We'll see. But if DC came and just said, "Hey, here's a check, shut up," I don't think Alan Moore would take it. Now, I do think there is a number where he would shut up. I don't think a lot of people can stand on principles, but there does come to be a point where things change. However, if DC said, "Hey, we're going to give you this big check, and we're going to issue a press release and a bunch of statements saying that we DC Comics are a bunch of fuckwits, and we screwed you over, and you were right, and we were wrong, and we never did intend to give you your work back. We were lying the whole time." If they said, "We're going to issue that statement and give you a check," I think he'd take it because of the principle of the thing. I think he would appreciate. I think he would like to hear that said out in public. DC will never do that, of course. But I mean, here's where maybe we disagree. I don't believe it's as magical. I don't believe that it's for comics. I think it's about pride. I think it's about ego. Because remember, Alan Moore did other things. He did the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He did other projects that got collected. Definitely had a financial component to them. And he's given speeches, and he's done things where he's paid for his appearance. I don't think it's purely the love for comics, magical. That's what drives him. And this may be an argument at this point between the letter writer and me about that's like splitting hairs. But I think that people who are truly altruistic about the comics would play it a different way. And I don't believe for a second Moore is altruistic about the comics, and that's the driving force. I think that his pride was wounded. I think it is a lot about control. I think it's a little bit about the money. But I think more than anything, it's the feeling of I believed I would be able to do what I wanted with the characters, and you, DC, took that away from me, and you didn't have the right to do that, so I'm angry. I think that's where a lot of it comes down to. But in fairness, and here comes the thing that hurts maybe a little bit to Moore and fans of Moore, if Moore had kept control of these characters, full control, and he could do whatever he wants with them, I absolutely believe Moore would have done prequels, sequels, other comics in this universe, just like DC did. He would have done them very, very differently. And if you're a fan of Moore and his work, you would probably say he would have done them much better because they would have been more true to the original vision. But, I think the idea that this is a pure piece of work that shouldn't be touched is wrong. I think with Watchmen, I believe it was a pure piece of work that he and only he wanted to touch. And given that, the aspects of this, here's the rub for me. This is where I'm a purist, and this is my opinion. Doesn't need to be yours. It's just how I look at this stuff. The second you accepted the check for it being a work for hire project, the second you accepted the money and said, "I'll make this and you pay me," and you turned in scripts and they sent you a check, the second it was like that, and then, DC all put it together and got distributed, did all those things, it's not yours anymore. It was never yours. It may be your creative vision, and that's why it gets to be your name on the cover, and why, you're deserved royalties, assuming that's part of the agreement, and why you should be able to sell off of that. You should be able to go out and get work completely independent of DC in this case, and say, "I was the writer of Watchmen, my creative vision made this, and, now I'm going to take my creative vision, I'm going to apply it to something else." I think that you have certainly the right to do that, and you deserve the right to do that. It's yours. Your name is yours. But if you do work for hire and somebody pays you to do this, it's theirs. It's not yours anymore. And I think that's where I get kind of, turned around on the entire Alan Moore issue, and why I've had, very fierce arguments for people, because they're like, "Well, don't you think he deserves it?" I'm like, deserves is a weird word. I think a lot of people deserve a lot of things. I deserve comics that are 75 cents. You know, I deserve for Mumbles to say nothing but nice things about me for a month. I deserve lots of stuff. But, you know, deserves and what's, you know, contractually fair are kind of two different things. I don't know that Alan Moore deserves to have Watchmen back. You know, DC coughed up the money. They paid him for it. He got royalties off of it. He got to, you know, definitely got a higher profile, got to sell his name and other work because of it. There's a 100% certainty that, you know, if DC had not done Watchmen, Alan Moore would not have as big a name in comics that he does today. Still a pretty big name, but if you take out the things he did for Marvel and DC, you just take Alan Moore's name, you know, all that work disappears. You know, we'd see Alan Moore as he was during the kind of British India invasion. You'd see that Alan Moore, which still would be great, be an interesting, you know, a lot of great work, but he would not be a well-known name in the States. Just like a lot of, you know, writers who worked in the indie scene and still work in the indie scene who are not a well-known name. Many of whom I think are far more talented than Alan Moore. And they haven't been given their due because nobody knows they exist. And so, I mean, you know, that doesn't mean that big corporations should treat people like shit. And if you know, in my book, if you do give your word, and depending on who you hear from or who you listen to, DC gave their word that Alan Moore would get the rights back at some point. That was their promise, and they broke that promise, or that promise is in, you know, suspended animation forever. You know, I think people should live up to their word, but I think that falls into the same camp as deserve and feelings. I think that's the moral thing to do, but there's a reason why people sign contracts. They sign contracts because that's going to be the law people write to, because people's definition of morals and what is fair and unfair tends to be a moving target at times. So to your point, yeah, I agree. I don't think it's all about the money with, you know, with Alan Moore. I don't think he's just out there to get, you know, it's just about the cash and nothing. I do think there's a creative pride issue. I think there's a bunch of things there. I don't agree that it's just the magical love of comics is what's driving his, you know, frustration in this area. I think that there's a lot more personal to Alan Moore wrapped up into it. It's why he's angry and why he's able to sustain the anger for so long, because there is a personal pride issue wrapped up into this. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think people should live by their word. And I think at the end of the day, you know, people should, you know, people need to live by the contracts they sign. And people need to also live by the word that they give. Unfortunately, only one of those can be held up in court. Thanks for listening.